The revelation. The crystalline dome of the Galactic Medical Council's grand chamber sparkled with the light of 3 distant suns. Dr. Rhiannon Sullivan stood at the podium, her dark hands steady despite the weight of what she was about to reveal. Before her, representatives from over 200 spacefaring civilizations waited in anticipation. Some floated in containment fields, others writhed in nutrient baths, and a few existed as pure energy confined within specialized chambers. Esteemed colleagues, Rhiannon began, her voice carrying through the chamber's advanced acoustics. What I'm about to share will challenge our understanding of biological resilience. She gestured to her research partner, Dr. Vikram Malhotra, who activated the holographic display. A murmur rippled through the assembled beings as a 3-dimensional image of human cellular structure materialized in the center of the chamber. The Zorasian delegation's tentacles twisted in agitation, while the crystalline luminized surfaces flickered with patterns of confusion. For the past 3 standard cycles, we've been studying a unique aspect of human biology that sets us apart from every known species in the galaxy. Rhiannon paused, letting the tension build. Our ability to regenerate. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of translated protests and exclamations. A meridian observer, its cloud-like form swirling with skepticism, spoke first. Regeneration is not unique, Dr. Sullivan. Many species can regrow lost appendages or repair minor damage. Rhiannon smiled. True, but human regeneration is fundamentally different. She rolled up her sleeve and produced a small medical tool. Before the Council's security protocols could react, she made a precise incision along her forearm. Gasps and electromagnetic pulses of shock rippled through the chamber. The wound bled for a moment, then began to close before their eyes. Within minutes, only a faint pink line remained. What you've just witnessed is not the result of technology or genetic modification, Rhiannon explained. This is natural human healing, albeit accelerated by the elevated oxygen content in this chamber. Every human possesses this ability to some degree. The quantum collective, a hive mind of subatomic particles, coalesced into a vaguely humanoid shape. Impossible. The energy requirements alone would be substantial, Vikram interrupted, stepping forward. Which is why humans require such frequent caloric intake. Our metabolic processes evolved to support this regenerative capability. Rhiannon nodded to her colleague and continued. But simple wound healing is just the beginning. Human bones knit themselves back together after breaks. Our liver can regenerate from as little as 25% of its original mass. Our skin constantly renews itself, and our immune system adapts to new threats with remarkable efficiency. The archival mind, an ancient silicon-based entity, shifted forward in its hovering platform. If what you say is true, Dr. Sullivan, why share this information now? Surely you must realize the implications. Rhiannon's expression grew serious. Because we've discovered something even more extraordinary. Our research suggests that human regenerative capabilities are still evolving. Each new generation shows subtle improvements in healing rate and efficiency. We believe this is just the beginning of understanding our species' true potential. The chamber grew silent as the implications sank in. It was the Meridian observer who finally spoke what many were thinking. You're saying humans are still actively evolving? Even after achieving spacefaring status? Precisely, Rhiannon confirmed. And we believe it's tied to our exposure to new environments and challenges. Space travel, different gravitational conditions, varied atmospheric compositions, each new stress seems to trigger adaptive responses in our cellular repair mechanisms. The Zorasian delegation withdrew their tentacles in what Rhiannon had learned was a gesture of deep concern. This makes your species potentially very dangerous. Adaptation at this scale should not be possible in a developed civilization. I understand your concern, Rhiannon said, her voice softening. But I would argue this makes us invaluable allies. Think of the medical applications alone. By studying human regeneration, we might develop new treatments for species with limited healing capabilities. We could. A sharp crack interrupted her words as a section of the chamber's environmental controls malfunctioned, releasing a burst of corrosive gas. Several delegates began emergency evacuation procedures, but Rhiannon and Vikram stood their ground. The gas burned their skin, but even as the council watched in horror and fascination, their bodies began to adapt and heal. This, Rhiannon said through gritted teeth, is exactly what I'm talking about. Our bodies are already analyzing the compound, developing countermeasures. Within hours, our skin will be more resistant to this specific corrosive agent. The Archival Minds platform hummed with increased power. You knew this would happen. You deliberately arranged this demonstration. No, Vikram replied, wincing as his skin continued to heal. But we suspected something like this might occur. There are those who fear what we represent. This attack only proves how important it is that we work together openly, rather than in fear and suspicion. As emergency systems cleared the gas, Rhiannon stepped forward again, her partially healed skin a testament to her words. We stand before you not as a threat, but as a reminder that evolution didn't stop when we reached the stars. Perhaps it's only beginning. The question is, will you help us understand and harness these abilities for the benefit of all species, or will fear drive us apart? The chamber remained silent as the implications of her words, and the demonstration they just witnessed, sank in. Humanity's place in the galaxy was about to change forever, and Rhiannon Sullivan had just lit the fuse. Beneath the surface. Admiral Gene Park stood at the viewport of the diplomatic vessel Concordia, watching the swirling nebula clouds beyond. The last 48 hours since Dr. Sullivan's presentation had been the most challenging of his 20-year career in the United Earth Space Force. Another delegation requesting immediate audience, Admiral, Lieutenant Olivia Santos reported, her holographic form flickering beside him. The Helion Consortium this time. They're citing Article 7 of the Galactic Charter, potential biological threats to collective security. Gene rubbed his temples. Add them to the queue. Priority 3. And get me Dr. Sullivan's latest report. Already done, sir. Though you might want to look at this first. Olivia projected a series of data streams into the air. We're detecting unusual movement patterns among the Zorasian fleet. Their warships are repositioning around their core worlds. Defensive formations, Gene murmured. They're afraid of us. The Admiral's comlink chimed with an incoming priority message. The quantum-encrypted channel opened to reveal Ambassador Zyra of the Lumini Collective, her crystalline form refracting light in patterns that indicated agitation. Admiral Park, she began, her translated voice carrying notes of concern. Our Council of Elders demands answers. The data from the medical presentation suggests humans possess capabilities that should be impossible for your level of technological advancement. Gene maintained his diplomatic composure. Ambassador, as Dr. Sullivan explained, our regenerative abilities are entirely natural. We've lived with them so long we considered them unremarkable until making contact with the galactic community. That is precisely what concerns us. Zyra's light patterns shifted to deep ultraviolet. Evolution doesn't work that way, Admiral. Unless. Her form flickered. Unless someone interfered with your species' development. The suggestion hung in the air like a charged particle. Gene had wondered the same thing since learning just how unique humans were in the galaxy. But he couldn't let such speculation derail diplomatic relations. Ambassador, I assure you. A warning klaxon cut him off. Olivia's hologram expanded, displaying tactical data. Sir, we have multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. Zorasian signatures, and they're scanning us with military-grade sensors. Gene straightened his uniform. Ambassador, I'll have to call you back. It seems we have some unexpected visitors. The viewport filled with the bioorganic shapes of Zorasian vessels, their living hulls pulsing with internal energy. Jean counted at least 12 ships, arranged in a containment pattern around the Concordia. "They're hailing us," Olivia reported. "Put them through." The holographic space before him filled with the tentacled form of High Commander Vextral, the Zoraxian's chromatophores flashing warning patterns. "Admiral Park. Your presence is required before the Emergency Security Council. Recent revelations about human biology have raised concerns. Commander, we've already scheduled meetings with." "This is not a request, Admiral." Vextral's tentacles writhed. "Your species represents an unprecedented biological anomaly. Until we understand the full implications, you will be considered a potential threat to galactic stability." Jin's jaw tightened. "Commander, surrounding a diplomatic vessel with warships could be considered an act of aggression. I suggest you reconsider your approach. Your suggestion is noted, but irrelevant. We've detected unusual cellular activity in every human aboard your vessel. You are all changing, adapting, evolving in real time. Such unpredictability cannot be allowed to." "Sir," Olivia interrupted, her expression urgent. "Medical emergency in the crew quarters. Dr. Malhotra collapsed during a routine examination. His vital signs are extraordinary." Jean felt a chill run down his spine. "What do you mean?" "His cellular structure is rapidly reorganizing. It's like nothing we've seen before, even with human regeneration. The medical team says, they say he's developing new organs." The news hit Jean like a physical blow. On the holographic display, Vextral's chromatophores pulsed triumphantly. "You see, Admiral. Even now, your bodies betray your true nature. You are not merely anomalous, you are an actively evolving threat to the established order of life itself. Commander, if one of my crew is experiencing a medical condition, that's all the more reason to belay that, Admiral," a new voice cut through the channel. Dr. Rhiannon Sullivan's face appeared on a separate holographic panel. She looked exhausted but exhilarated. "What's happening to Dr. Malhotra isn't an isolated incident. We're detecting similar changes in human populations across 3 star systems. It's exactly what we predicted in our research, just accelerated." Jean fought to maintain his diplomatic composure as his world tilted on its axis. "Doctor, this isn't helping our current situation." "On the contrary, Admiral," Rhiannon's eyes sparkled with discovery. "It's proving everything we hypothesized. Contact with new species, exposure to different environmental conditions, they're not just triggering our standard regenerative responses. They're pushing our evolution in entirely new directions. We're adapting to life among the stars in ways we never imagined possible." Vextral's tentacles coiled in agitation. "You admit this freely? Do you not understand what this means?" "Oh, we understand perfectly," Rhiannon replied. "It means humanity isn't just joining the galactic community, we're becoming something entirely new in the process. And we're inviting you all to study and understand this transformation with us." Jean watched as the Zoracian commander processed this. The situation balanced on a knife's edge, fear could easily tip them into conflict, but curiosity might just save them all. "Admiral," Olivia's hologram flickered urgently. "Dr. Malhotra's readings, they're stabilizing." "And sir? He's conscious. He's asking to speak with the Zoracian commander." Jean looked from Rhiannon's determined face to Vextral's writhing tentacles. The next few moments would determine humanity's path among the stars, whether they would be seen as a threat to be contained or a mystery to be understood. "Commander," Jean said carefully, "perhaps we should all discuss this somewhere more suitable than surrounded by warships. After all, if humanity is truly evolving as Dr. Sullivan suggests, wouldn't you prefer to be at the forefront of understanding this phenomenon?" The space between ships crackled with tension as they awaited the Zoracian response. The future of human-alien relations hung in the balance, and Jean Park could only hope that scientific curiosity would prove stronger than fear. Breaking point. The alarms aboard Deep Space Station Helios screamed through every corridor as Dr. Nadia Patel raced toward the xenobiology lab. Her breath came in short bursts, heart pounding against her ribs as she rounded another corner. Behind her, she could hear the distinct sound of molecular bonds breaking down. The station's very structure was beginning to fail. "Status report," she barked into her comm unit. The station's AI responded immediately. "Containment breach in Lab 7 continues to expand. Corrosive agent of unknown origin consuming all standard materials. 47 non-human personnel successfully evacuated to safe zones. 3 human crew members trapped in affected areas." Nadia skidded to a halt before a sealed emergency bulkhead. Through the reinforced observation window, she could see the horror unfolding beyond. The sleek walls of the station were dissolving into a shimmering vapor, creating an ever-expanding sphere of destruction. "Dr. Patel," a calm voice spoke from behind her. "I strongly advise against what you're planning." She turned to face Ambassador Crix of the Meridian Concordat, his gaseous form swirling with concern. "Those are my people in there, Ambassador. And right now, I'm the only one who might survive long enough to reach them. Because you're human. It wasn't a question. You're counting on your species' remarkable healing factor. But this is different from anything we've encountered before. The compound appears to break down molecular bonds at an atomic level." Nadia checked the readings on her tablet. "Then my cells will just have to adapt faster than they break down." She began entering the override code for the bulkhead. "This is precisely the kind of biological response that terrifies the galactic community," Crix continued. "Your willingness, your eagerness, to throw yourself into lethal situations, trusting your bodies to somehow overcome them." The bulkhead slid open with a hiss. "Would you prefer I let them die?" Nadia asked, pulling on a protective suit she knew would only buy her a few extra minutes at best. "I would prefer you wait for the containment team. They're only 20 minutes out. The crew in there doesn't have 20 minutes. Nadia sealed her helmet. "And if you're so worried about human biological responses, Ambassador, you should be very interested in what happens next. Consider it a field test." Before Crix could respond, she stepped through the bulkhead. The sealed door slid shut behind her with a final sounding thunk. The environment beyond was like something from a nightmare. The station's walls rippled like water, streams of metallic vapor rising into the air where emergency force fields struggled to contain them. Each step brought a new wave of warnings from her suit's sensors as the corrosive agent began attacking its outer layer. "Dr. Liu," she called out. "Dr. Chandra. Rodriguez. Can anyone hear me?" A weak cough echoed through her comm. "Nadia." It was Dr. Samira Chandra's voice. We're in the sample storage room. The containment fields are failing. Marcus is hurt bad." "I'm coming," Nadia promised, pushing forward as her suit's integrity dropped below 60%. She could feel heat beginning to seep through in places where the corrosive agent had already breached the outer layer. The first real pain hit as she reached the main lab area. A drop of the substance had eaten through her suit's knee joint, touching skin. The agony was immediate and intense, but Nadia forced herself to focus on the readings from her medical implant. Already, her cells were responding, attempting to analyze and adapt to the threat. "Fascinating," she muttered through gritted teeth. "The compound isn't just corrosive, it's actively bonding with organic material, attempting to reorganize it at a molecular level." Her suit's integrity dropped below 40% as she reached the sample storage room. Through the haze of dissolving metal, she could see 3 figures huddled in the far corner, protected by a failing containment field. "Hold on," she called out, making her way toward them. Each step was agony now as more of the substance breached her suit. But something else was happening too. The pain was changing, becoming less intense. Her medical implant showed rapid cellular adaptation taking place. "Impossible," Dr. Liu whispered as she reached them. "Your suit is almost completely compromised. You should be dead. Nadia managed a tight smile behind her partially dissolved helmet. Looks like humanity's peculiar biology is good for something after all. Now let's get you out of here. But as she reached for the portable force field generator they'd been using for protection, a new alarm sounded. The station's AI spoke urgently, warning. Structural integrity of Section 7 reaching critical failure. Complete collapse imminent. Nadia looked at her 3 colleagues, then at her readings. Her cells were adapting, yes, but not fast enough to protect 4 people. Unless. Ambassador Crix, she spoke into her comm, are you still monitoring? Affirmative, Dr. Patel. Your biological readings are extraordinary. Good. Because I'm about to try something either brilliant or suicidal. She turned to her colleagues. I need you to trust me and do exactly what I say. My body is adapting to this compound. If I'm right, my blood could temporarily protect you from its effects. You want to share your blood with us? Rodriguez asked, his face pale from where the corrosive vapor had burned him. More than that. I think I can feel my cells changing. Learning. Evolving. If I can transfer some of these adapted cells to you, it might buy us enough time to reach safety. Dr. Liu shook his head. The risk of rejection is better than certain death, Nadia finished. She pulled a medical sampler from her belt, watching as the device's housing began to dissolve. We have maybe 2 minutes before this section tears itself apart. Are you in? They looked at each other, then at the dissolving walls around them. Finally, Dr. Chandra spoke, do it. Working quickly, Nadia drew her own rapidly adapting blood and prepared 4 emergency injections. As she administered them, she could feel the station groaning around them, ready to tear itself apart. Now we run, she said, helping Marcus Rodriguez to his feet. And we pray that humanity's biological oddities are as remarkable as everyone fears they are. Together, they plunged back into the dissolving corridor, racing against time and cellular breakdown, while above them, Ambassador Crix watched in horror and fascination as 4 humans did what should have been impossible, adapted and survived. The experiment. Xenobiologist Tamir Hassan knew he shouldn't be here. The abandoned research facility on Proxima VII's third moon bore no official designation, no registration with the Galactic Science Council. According to all records, it didn't exist. Yet here he stood, his flashlight beam cutting through decades of dust as he followed the trail of encrypted data that had led him to this place. Recording log entry, he whispered into his neural link. Time-stamp 2347 local. Facility appears to predate human contact with galactic civilization by at least 30 years. Architecture suggests Zorasian origin, but... He paused, examining strange markings on a wall. There are elements I don't recognize. The facility's power systems had long since failed, leaving only emergency lighting strips casting a dim blue glow through the corridors. Tamir's handheld scanner showed no signs of life, yet he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Found what appears to be a main research chamber, he continued, approaching a massive circular room. Multiple examination stations, scanning equipment, and preservation tanks. His flashlight beam revealed rows of cylindrical containers, their contents lost to time. But it was the data terminals that drew his attention. Despite the facility's age, they showed signs of recent access. Someone's been here, he muttered, plugging a bypass module into the nearest terminal. Within the last 48 hours. The screen flickered to life, ancient systems groaning back to consciousness. Lines of alien text scrolled past, but Tamir's neural translator struggled with the dialect. This is older than standard Zorasian. Some kind of scientific shorthand, maybe. A sound echoed through the facility, metal on metal, distant but distinct. Tamir froze, his heart pounding. The scanner still showed no life signs, but in a place this old, with unknown technology. Who's there? He called out, immediately regretting breaking the silence. No response came, but his neural link pinged with an incoming data stream. The terminal had found something: research logs, experimental data, and... No, Tamir breathed, watching the footage play across his field of vision. That's impossible. The recordings showed humans, or at least, beings that looked remarkably human, being studied in this facility. But the timestamp indicated these experiments took place nearly 50 years before humanity's first contact with alien life. They knew about us, he realized. They were studying us before we ever reached the stars. More data poured in. Detailed analyses of human cellular structure, regenerative capabilities, evolutionary patterns. The Zoraxians hadn't just been studying humans, they'd been testing them, pushing the limits of their adaptation. Another sound, closer now. Tamir quickly downloaded everything he could to his neural storage. Log update: evidence suggests unauthorized experimentation on human subjects prior to official first contact. Purpose unclear, but data indicate specific interest in. The lights suddenly blazed to full power, blinding him. As his eyes adjusted, Tamir found himself surrounded by a dozen figures in environmental suits. Their designs were unlike anything he'd seen before, neither human nor any known alien species. Dr. Hassan, one of them spoke, their voice distorted through their helmet speaker. "We've been expecting you." Tamir's hand went to the emergency beacon on his belt. "Who are you?" "The real question," the figure replied, "is who are you? Or more precisely, what are humans truly capable of becoming?" The figures began to advance, and Tamir noticed something odd about their movements: too fluid, too precise. "You're not wearing those suits for protection," he realized. "You're wearing them for containment." "Very good, Doctor. We had hoped your natural curiosity would lead you here. Your species has such potential. But potential must be properly directed." Tamir backed away, his mind racing. "The experiments in these logs, you're still running them, aren't you? Still trying to understand how humans adapt and evolve. Understanding is only the first step. Your Dr. Sullivan's recent revelation to the Galactic Council forced us to accelerate our timeline, but in truth, we've been guiding human evolution for generations." "That's impossible," Tamir protested. "We would have known." "Would you?" The figure tilted their head. "How do you think humanity developed such remarkable regenerative abilities in the first place? Natural selection? Random chance? No, Doctor. You were designed. Cultivated. And now, at last, you're ready for the next phase of your development." Tamir's back hit a wall. The emergency beacon in his hand seemed useless now. Even if help came, what would they find? What evidence would remain? "Why?" he demanded. "Why engineer an entire species in secret?" The figure stepped closer. "Because the galaxy is changing, Dr. Hassan. Ancient threats are stirring. The established order of spacefaring races is insufficient to face what's coming. We needed to create something new. Something adaptable. Something that could evolve to meet any challenge." "You're talking about weapons," Tamir realized with horror. "You engineered humans to be living weapons. We engineered you to be survivors, Doctor. And now, you're going to help us complete the process." The figures closed in, and Tamir felt a strange sensation washing over him, not fear, but something else. His cells were reacting to their presence, trying to adapt to whatever they were. Even now, his body was attempting to evolve in response to the threat. "You feel it, don't you?" the leader asked. "Your body responding, changing, becoming something new. That's what makes humans so perfect. You don't just adapt to survive, you thrive on change itself." Tamir's vision began to blur, his consciousness fading. But before the darkness took him, he managed to transmit one final log entry: "They didn't find us by accident. They made us what we are. And they're not finished with humanity yet. The last thing he saw was his own reflection in the figure's helmet, his eyes beginning to change color, his skin taking on a strange metallic sheen. The next phase of human evolution had begun, whether humanity was ready or not. Convergence. The emergency session of the Galactic Council chamber crackled with tension. Dr. Rhiannon Sullivan stood alongside Admiral Jean Park, Dr. Nadia Patel, and the recently rescued Tamir Hassan, facing representatives from every major spacefaring civilization. The evidence Tamir had recovered from the secret facility played on massive holographic displays, impossible to ignore or deny. So, the archival mind's voice resonated through the chamber: humans were engineered. Created as biological weapons by some unknown force preparing for an unnamed threat. That's one interpretation, Rhiannon responded, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. But I don't believe it's the complete truth. The data from Tamir's neural storage swirled around them, decades of secret research, genetic manipulation, and carefully guided evolution. But there was something else, something in the patterns that had been nagging at her since she first reviewed the files. High Commander Vextral, she called out to the Zorasian leader. Your people's involvement in these experiments, it wasn't willing, was it? The commander's chromatophores flashed patterns of distress. No. We discovered the facility centuries ago, but its technology was beyond even our understanding. We were compelled to assist. To observe. Until recently, we couldn't even speak of it. Because whoever created that facility wanted to keep their work secret, Admiral Park added. But they didn't count on human curiosity. They didn't expect Dr. Hassan to find their lab, or Dr. Patel to push the boundaries of our adaptation, or Dr. Sullivan to reveal our abilities to the galaxy. Nadia stepped forward, her skin still showing traces of the metallic sheen from the station incident. The changes we're experiencing, they're accelerating. But not in the way our mysterious engineers intended. We're not becoming weapons. We're becoming something else entirely. The chamber's quantum displays suddenly flickered, and a new presence made itself known. A figure appeared in the center of the room, wearing one of the environmental suits from the secret facility. But this time, the suit was empty. Clever humans, a voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere at once. Always pushing beyond your programming. Always exceeding expectations. You're one of our creators, Tamir said, his altered eyes focusing on the empty suit. Show yourself. Really show yourself. The suit collapsed, and in its place, a being of pure energy materialized. We were like you once. Physical. Limited. But we evolved beyond such constraints. We thought we could engineer a species to follow our path, to become the guardians we could no longer be. Guardians against what? Admiral Park demanded. The energy being's form rippled. The void between galaxies is not empty, Admiral. There are things out there that your current form of consciousness cannot comprehend. We thought we could guide humanity to become weapons against these threats. Instead, we became bridges, Rhiannon finished, suddenly understanding. The changes we're experiencing, they're not making us more dangerous. They're making us more connected. More adaptable. More capable of understanding different forms of life. The being's energy pulsed in what might have been approval. Your bodies don't just heal, they learn. Your cells don't just regenerate, they reach out to understand what hurt them. Every adaptation brings you closer to comprehending the true diversity of life in this universe. Nadia touched her altered skin. The station incident, when I shared my blood with my colleagues. That wasn't just about survival, was it? We weren't just adapting to the threat. We were adapting to each other. And now, Tamir added, his engineered eyes seeing patterns in the energy being's form, we're adapting to understand you. All of you. The Archival Minds platform hummed. This changes everything. Humans aren't a threat to galactic stability, they're essential to it. They're evolving to become translators, mediators between different forms of life. Around the chamber, representatives began to understand. The quantum collective's particles swirled in new patterns. The Zoraxians' chromatophores displayed colors never before seen. The luminized crystalline forms refracted light in impossible ways. But the choice must be yours, the energy being said. We engineered your potential, but we cannot control your path. What humanity becomes is up to you. Rhiannon looked at her colleagues, seeing the changes already manifesting in each of them. Nadia's metallic skin that could interface with technology. Tamir's eyes that could perceive quantum states. Her own cells, constantly learning, constantly reaching out to understand the universe around her. We choose to be bridges, she declared. Not weapons, not tools, but connections. We choose to use our ability to adapt and change to bring understanding where there was fear, cooperation where there was conflict. Admiral Park stepped forward. We choose to face whatever threats exist beyond our galaxy not as soldiers, but as part of a united community of life in all its forms. The energy being's form began to fade. Then perhaps our greatest experiment has succeeded after all, just not in the way we intended. The galaxy needs bridges more than it needs weapons. The void between stars needs understanding more than it needs fear. As the being vanished, the chamber erupted in discussion. But something had changed. The fear that had pervaded every interaction since Dr. Sullivan's first revelation was gone, replaced by curiosity, hope, and possibility. Well, Nadia said, examining her altered reflection in a nearby surface, I guess this means humanity's place in the galaxy is going to be a lot more interesting than we thought. Rhiannon smiled, watching as her own cells reached out to understand the quantum fluctuations around her. We're not just joining the galactic community anymore. We're helping it evolve. All of us, together. Above them, stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, and somewhere in the void between galaxies, ancient threats stirred. But they would not face them with weapons and fear. They would face them with understanding, adaptation, and the combined strength of all forms of life, bridged together by humanity's greatest gift, the ability to change, to learn, and to connect. The biological anomaly that had terrified the universe had become its greatest hope for unity. And this was just the beginning.